Hi everybody, welcome to the weekend analysis. This will be for the upcoming week of the 13th of October 2025. Now do note that markets are closed tomorrow for a public holiday in the US. So do note that Singapore markets will still be open, but in the US the markets are actually closed. Now Friday, I think everybody has been wondering like what exactly is happening to the markets, right? Essentially, it's back to where we were essentially in April, right? Trump and China, right? Again, implementing tariffs on each other. Trump threatening to impose another 100% on tariffs on the U.S. as well. So that was actually the key news on Friday. I think markets fell quite sharply on that news, but I think we shouldn't be too what we call too concerned, right? I think the reason is because markets are overbought, right? I always talk about this whenever markets go up in a straight line. That's a very unhealthy kind of thing. What we like markets to do is that they go up in down, up, down, up, down, up kind of cycle, right? The market has been going up non-stop all the way since April, right? The last time we touched the 50-day moving average was in April, right? But last Friday the markets pulled back and we actually touched the 50-day moving average. I think on all three indices, the S&P 500 on your screen, Dow Jones as well as the Nasdaq Composite Index. So what's going to happen next week? Well, I think markets has potential to move lower, right? The reason is because Friday's candle was actually on an extended volume. Now typically, especially when you have a public holiday on Monday, markets tend to react quite strongly. So let's see what happens, right? What you can see here is what we call a very bearish candle, right? This engulfs all the way back into a couple of weeks. This is a reversal kind of candle, and this usually tend to signal the start of an impending corrective period in the markets. Okay, so I think markets are starting to correct, which is good news, right, on the whole, because markets are just way overbought, and there has been just a total lack of opportunities, right, in the markets, right? Whenever I come here in the weekend analysis, I'm like struggling to find names to buy because markets are just so way overbought, right? So if the markets pull back, I think that would be a much better opportunity for us to really be going long the markets. I've actually been looking forward to it, right, for a period of time, waiting for this pullback. So finally, it looks like we're getting this pullback. Now, if you ask me to guess where we could probably pull back to, maybe 620, right? 620 could be an area, somewhat around here, 620. I think that could be an area that markets could actually bounce. Now, if you look at Nasdaq as well, pulling back as well, right? I can't really put a range to the Nasdaq because there's not much really of support. But if you ask me to guess, maybe around this area here, where you can see a pull bunch of support here around 560, that could be a potential bottom area for the market. So overall, I think markets are very overbought. Look at the VIX, right? VIX spiked last week. I think it's a matter of time before VIX goes higher. So I think markets are likely to pull back quite sharply in the near term. If the markets open on Tuesday, I think we get a big down move to the downside. I think that's what's going to happen in the market. So, but anyway, I think the good news is that on this pullback, we have seen this time and time again, right? Trump will always go back on it and say, come to some form of conclusion to this, and then the markets rally again. So I think it's not new, right? But it's good news for us, right? Because we know that markets eventually go higher in the longer run. I think end of the year, markets will be higher. But in these couple of months, we could actually see a short-term pullback here in the markets because of what's happening geopolitically. But I think on a longer-term scale, whatever is happening is actually positive for the markets in the long run. Now, if you look at the names that we covered in weekend analysis, right, a lot of them were hit quite hard, right? But there are also names that were not really hit, right? Like for example, if you look at Salesforce, right, you can see that Friday was barely hit, right, down 1.6%, and Zscaler as well, right, wasn't really hit that much. Now these are names that I think are the relatively stronger names in the markets. Obviously, you have many names like semiconductors hit even more last week, but also do note that semiconductors had a very strong rally, right, last week, especially led by AMD, which I've talked about so many times about how bullish I am on the stock as well on the longer term. So I think markets are starting to pull back. You need to be a bit careful here, right? Because a lot of these stocks are showing a potential topping pattern in the near term. Look at Microsoft here, right? Microsoft threatening to sell below the 50-day moving average. And I thought about Microsoft before. I think Microsoft is way overbought. I don't think you really want to be buying Microsoft here, right? This is what we call a very bearish reversal candle, and price has not reversed back above that. So I think Microsoft, like all these names, just need to be a little bit careful here. Now, today's weekend analysis, I won't really go through all these names because I think they are quite bearish, in the near term because of the markets pulling back, and I think that you'll be able to get prices when it pulls back. But then again, I think there are many names as well, like for example Apple on your screen, like Apple, the Microsoft, you can actually buy it on pullback, right? Like Apple, right? Look at this, finally pulling back towards a 50-day moving average, super overbought already, right? So many names, Google, you get Google, Microsoft, Apple, all super overbought, and this pullback in the markets, I think in the longer run will be highly positive. Now, if I want to go back to the weekly chart of the S&P 500, right? Look at the weekly chart. Right, if you look at the weekly chart, you can see that the stochastic on your screen, right, which measures the high lows points of the markets. You can see that we are really very high, right? We are near 90 and 100 on the stochastic all the way since April, and finally we're getting a bit of a pullback. So I think generally the market has high probability that it will pull back over the next couple of weeks. That's just my guess. High probability we could get a very fast sell down and then very quick rebound. That's my guess, right? So I think you just need to be a little bit careful here. You just take a side pause over the next couple of weeks. I think the markets will show a bit more clarity. Right, I don't think there's any point today going through all the individual names because there's really nothing to decipher about this except for the fact that markets are pulling back. Right, because they are so overbought. The news aside, markets are very overbought already, having already ran all the way since the start of the year. Okay, so today's weekend analysis will be short and concise. I think most importantly, the messaging is markets are going to pull back. They are going to pull back, right, in the near term. I think you need to be a little bit careful here. If you have some profits to take, you can start taking those profits because markets are going to pull back. But when it pulls back, I think that's going to be the buying world opportunity for this year. Now, I last saw this opportunity in April. I think we're going to get a similar opportunity here, probably in November, mid-November kind of period. So watch for that very closely. I'll be watching closely for you. And I think most importantly, just continue to remain patient and on the sidelines. Alright, with that, I want to wish you a good week ahead. Please take care and stay safe. Thank you very much.